Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey, everybody. Today we have a special guest, one who I was fortunate enough to run into when I was down at the Olympia, and he fortunately agreed to come on. He is a mountain of a man, LeRoy The Machine Walker, who was an unbelievable bench presser. He's doing arm wrestling. I don't know if you've done grip stuff or not yet, but this guy just puts up phenomenal numbers. Huge, massive dude, strong as hell. LeRoy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. So I think I looked up your best bench was a 675. Was that correct?
Yeah.
And that's raw.
Yeah.
And you have a strict curl world record of 250 pounds, which I've never been much on curling myself. So that's just that's a huge amount of weight, I think. And that's literally, you guys are standing with your back against the wall, and you got to keep your back and your butt against the wall. Like there's no swinging or nothing. You're just curling it.
Yeah. From a dead spot on your thighs. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a massive amount. Have you done any grip work? Or grip competitions, I should say.
Getting into strict curl, I started to work it a little bit just because there was so much that needed to be, as far as like improving the solidarity of the wrist and the joint right there. It was definitely helpful, and your grip kind of gets enhanced when you work a lot of curls and for bench press. But I never done just worked focused primarily on grip. Like, I understand it's like a huge thing now. Like it's actual sport, and they have, arm lifts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's always been intriguing, and I've started to train more of it because of arm wrestling, but I've never looked to get into it like pinch and hold it competitively. I have great admiration for the people. I just haven't really thought about setting aside a block of training to dive into it.
Right. So let's kind of go back to how you started. I mean, how tall are you?
5'11".
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
You seem taller than that to me. And so you're about, I think Open Powerlifting said you were about 360.
Yeah, I'm scaling down now, about 330.
Okay. Because you have at the Olympia, you have some broad ass shoulders, man. Like they're huge. So were you a big kid? Were you big your whole life, or did you?
No, I think I really started to get, broader shoulders and a bigger base after college. After college, I power lifted. I got into it during high school, but it was really just primarily, we did all the basics, in high school. We did the bigger, stronger, faster. Mm-hmm. We had competitive, powerlifting mock meets, but nothing like USPA or WRP or any of that stuff. And then when I got into college, I started to do a little bit like when I graduated high school. Like I think I did my first powerlifting meet. It was a bench only meet. I think like 18. Hit like a 484 raw, and then a couple months later went to like a fair, like your basic summertime fair. Yeah. They're like, hey, who can bench press? So I think I did my first 500-pound raw, like with a pause at like 19. And then
that's a big bench still for that age.
With it I didn't have the same type of coaching in college, although we had good strength and conditioning people. I didn't have the same people to spot, wrap knees and all that stuff, because I was super cautious about that stuff during high school. And just with not having that same base of people around you, because football in college, you're kind of in and out. You're doing a couple specific lifts. You're getting your lift, then you're up to practice, or, it's off season. And so, I dabbled in a couple of meets here and there just to kind of stay competitive, nothing serious. And then afterwards, after, graduating college, I still had that competitive edge. But I was there at the time. There was only commercial gyms around. Excuse me. So I just, you could always find people to spot you on the bench. So at a commercial gym, I just kind of stayed with it, and just kind of went from there.
So you played football in high school and in college.
Yeah, I played football. I played all three. I was three-sport athlete: football, wrestling, baseball, and then still stayed competitive in wrestling in college. Up until my sophomore year, I was good. At the college though, but just to not to the level to stay committed to it all year round and dedicated like you needed to be at the collegiate level. Same thing with baseball. I went out, but you learn early on, and I always have this conversation with people. Unless you're like a quote unquote Dion or Bo Jackson, unless you are a next level phenomenal baseball player at the college level, and it's not saying politics are going to keep you out of it, but the politics are if you're not one of the roster guys that are there all year round for fall ball, learning the ins and outs, the way they're going to play defense, the way the hitting and that whole thing. If you're not one of those guys and you can't just walk in and just hit home runs or have unbelievable speed, or you're a pitcher, there's not a lot of love for you from the team or from the coaching staff. So you learn early on, if you're at a school that's serious, they're not going to let you play both. It's one or the other. And I felt at the time I'd have a better ability to go further with football than I would baseball, because I figured in baseball, I was a realist. It's kind of like if you're not drafted or a high prospect out of high school, it's kind of like you're just kind of trying to live out a dream. So I just stuck with football. And then when I graduated, it was easy just to maintain the bench press.
Right. So you were pretty strong you were strong in high school and in college.
Yes and no. Believe it or not, if I had a dime for every time I post like a throwback Thursday or Friday pick of, being in high school, I felt 375 was doing something in high school, but just, hey, leave it up to the internet. They'll tell you how many people were benching 400 or 500 pounds in fucking high school, with no pictures, no video, no nothing. And I said, looking back at it, for a while, I think I had like the high school record, and then I hear people benching, 425 in high school. And me, it's like kind of like you always tend to look at things, I think, and this is just in life. You look at things through the perspective or the lens that you look at things through. So in high school, except for I think like 21 Jump Street, I never fucking heard of steroids or PEDs. I was like, oh, that's that. I saw a show on it, and you get bloody noses and you want to fucking punch people, and and then I think the program, and that one Vlad, you see him like, seat at the table, and I was kind of like glorified it, and I was like, oh, it's kind of too scary for me. And so it's one of those things that just never, I just never thought about being ridiculously strong. I just kind of like, I just assumed everybody was raw, natural, and you got stronger because you put in the time. Like a Saturday for me was just spending all day in the garage, just lifting. I got my ass kicked when I was a kid, and like junior high, like middle school. I grew up poor. I don't want to sound like a president, so I grew up in a middle class family. No, I grew up super poor. So the point of saying that is I never had cool shoes. I had waffle stompers, those brown boots with the red laces and the waffle on them. I was uncoordinated, so no one wanted me to play soccer because I'd miss the ball, kick them. Like, oh, we don't want this fucking kid with the waffle stompers kicking us. So I was just uncoordinated, picked last, went through a chubby phase, got picked on. And then my uncle kind of took me under his wing. And, he was a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, big amateur bodybuilder. So he taught me sets and reps. And, a lot of my Saturdays and Sundays were just, all my off time was just kind of spent in the garage, just getting better. Started with a huge crowbar and 25s.
I think that's actually cool and probably true of a lot of really big, strong guys. I know I kind of went through that chubby phase when I was a kid. You get picked on and you're just like, I just want to get stronger, because then maybe it doesn't really change you, but like you think it's going to make things easier, which it kind of does.
It
And
does.
then, but I think if people are like scared of the big guys, and I'm like, listen, they actually know what it's like to be on the other end. Like most of the big guys that I know are the coolest dudes.
Yeah, I think we all kind of hold on to that functionally fluffy. Like we love the newfound strength, but we don't want to give up the. I think every world class powerlifter inside is still the chubby kid that doesn't have the discipline to be a bodybuilder. I'm just gonna fucking be real about it. That or they didn't want to go through with the supplement regimen. And that was me for the longest time. I don't think I dabbled or crossed over until I was like a junior in college, to be honest with you. So I was happy to get up to like a 500 plus raw bench like natty.
Oh, that's huge. I mean, that's a massive number. I was kind of similar because I did in high school. I actually wrote a couple papers about steroids and I believed all the government bullshit. And I'm like, I'm never doing them. I'm never doing them. And I didn't end up doing them until I was like 30 and they found out I had low testosterone. And I was like, well, if I'm going on, I might as well play around with it. Yeah, but so I still think there's something between a guy who gets to a certain level clean. And I'm not against steroids by any means, but I recommend, like most guys, get your base, like get a solid base, get really good strength, then think about doing that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Not to go too far off subject, that's exactly what I believe. Looking back on it now, like going from natty to super strong, enhanced to going off, and now being in my 40s, I tell everyone, like, first off, get your. I don't think enough people put emphasis on getting their blood work done to see exactly where they're at. Like You don't know what you don't know. And then two, just build up a strength. I think I saw, in this sport, looking back the last 20 years, I've seen so many one-hit wonders, so many people that were like going to be the next great thing in the 19, 20, 21, 22, and then they just get too big, too strong. And a lot of it's because their tendons, can't, the muscle attached, they just can't handle the load under the load under tension. And they snap, they get a lot of injuries, then you never hear from them.
Yeah.
Again. So I think for me, I was fortunate, one, not to jump on anything until like later. And then, after college, I was competitive a little bit, got married, kind of, you kind of fall off if you don't really have that drive to stay competitive. So I didn't really start picking it up again until my early mid 30s, which is when you're in your wheelhouse of strength anyway. So I think I avoided that proverbial going too hard, too fast wall that a lot of people hit. And that's why you see a lot of people are phenomenal, in their teens and early 20s, and then they fall off. Or a lot of people are really great mid 30s, and then, they continuously, get better and stronger. I think a lot of it's just learning from your mistakes, learning more of, it's not so much what you need to do, it's who you need to become. You need to have the mental, fortitude to stick with a program, not jump on every fad, trust the methodology, add in new stuff, but keep what works. And that's a fine line of being able to keep what works and be really decisive in cutting out what doesn't work on your strength, and understand it's linear. It's always going to be changing. The goal and the destination might be similar, but it's always going to evolve over time. And most people don't give themselves enough grace or patience to see that course stay, steady.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it was Chuck Vogelpohl I heard say it's a sport of attrition. And it's like, it just doesn't happen overnight. And if it does happen quickly, like you said, those are the guys that have the tendon and ligament and injury issues. The guys that stay steady and consistent, those are the guys that are doing it. And I mean, I don't think we hit our strength peak till we're in our mid 30s.
Yeah.
And you don't want to tear yourself up before that.
And we attribute a lot of stuff to just, this next generation. We all get hit with this generation. I did it. I was like, oh, these fucking old timers when I was in the gym, and now I'm that old guy. But it's especially with social media. We want our instant gratification. We have access to so much stuff that we didn't before. And a lot of these new people that I coach, whether it's bench press, strict curl, or just strengths in general, I think if I could pass off one trait that's going to be the difference between someone being a champion and not, and I don't even want to get into the genetics and all this other stuff part of it, it's really just patience to me. Yeah. It's patience to be able to stick to a plan, stick to not necessarily a coach, but just stick with just train. If I had, like I said, back to the throwback Thursday, I don't know anybody that became a world champ because they were the strongest person out of high school. I say it's never where you start, it's where you finish and where your career takes you. You know what I mean? If I could go down the list of all the great bench pressers I know, if you look back, they weren't the strongest guy out of high school. I've never seen anybody be the strongest guy in high school. Now he goes on to be one of the strongest people in the world. It's actually the opposite from what I've seen.
That's one of the things I like to bring up on the podcast is how long have guys been doing it? Because I do think in that social media realm, people are like, oh my God, look how strong that guy is. And they don't ever take the time to go, do you realize he's been lifting for 15 years or 20 years? They think it happened overnight and they don't set realistic goals for themselves.
Oh, it is, especially and I love social media and I love trolling, with the best of them. It's funny, like I can pull out lifts that I was doing 5-10 years ago, and I'll see people do these lifts now, and they're getting millions of views, and the internet's treating them like they're like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm like, you realize I was doing that way back, and I'm talking like it's funny because now I can look at the gym fuckery now that is commonplace and people are wowed by it. And it was so taboo when I was doing it. Like, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, I hit like a 3. And this is out of all, we all got our gym stories. There's 2 times that I feel like an old timer. Like, I feel like the fucking Al Bundy 4 touchdowns, 1 game at Polk High. It's when I hit a 700 touch and go in the gym and I didn't get it on fucking film. And, true story, I went through some shit with some sponsors. And so there's part of me where, as showing loyalty to the new brand that I was with, I went through and I just X'd out a lot of the old brand stuff. And with that, looking back on it, one, the brand didn't care. They didn't tell me to do it. I just wanted to do it to prove my loyalty. But right. I lost some pretty good footage that, I wish till this day I could get back. And one of them was 330 single arm incline bench press because, and I love, and hey, before I say it, I love Big Boy. I love Blake. I love what he's doing. I love the 315. But so many people are like, when I post mine, they're like, you realize someone's already has the world record and he's from England. I'm like, you realize who started this trend, right? And so I wish I had the 330 to prove it because all I have now is the 300 and the 315. And so every time he posted just for clicks, I'll post it and like, who did it better? You know what I mean? But and people get so like involved in like just like they get so fanboy behind these lists. I'm like, it's a fucking never gonna happen in a competition. It's like, what is even good for other than I did it when I was in my off season because I was bored. But there's no functionality to it. But people love these gym lifts.
They do love the gym lifts. It's funny because when I being older, I lost a lot of video because back in the day when you had a tape and we'd go to the gym and we would tape it and then you'd watch it and you're like, oh shit, I don't have money for another tape. I'm just gonna start taping over this. So like a lot of my gym shit I taped over and it's like, whatever. It's still just stories now.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny because now it's like so much of the stuff is just accepted. And I was like, man, I wish I was given half the grace. And I say that tongue in cheek. I say I wish, but I really don't. I look back and I love that people were just keyboard warriors. I love all that shit I went through early on, with YouTube and the early days of Instagram. People, oh, there's a finger on the bar, or unless you do it in competition, it doesn't matter. Because for the longest time, when Instagram came out and YouTube, me and my friend, I just loved fucking going and just making unrealistic looking videos, and I would get people would like just troll and trigger happy. So, you know what I mean? They were like, oh, can you do it? And here's the thing, what's funny, there was such a disconnect because, and I don't know if you've seen this, I could go out and post a 650 like sanction lift and it will get like 1,000 views. And I can post some gym fuckery like 500 for 10 touch and goes, elbow wrap to the fucking neck, and it will get like 1 million views. Half of it's people talking shit. The other half is like, wow, You know what I mean? But it's like, I learned early on, the internet doesn't give a fuck when you do stuff legitimately. It's all the weird, like, I could do a gym fail. You know, I could label, I could do the same. You know what? Till this day, I can do the same lift. And if I just label it and put a bunch of stuff on there, gym fail, you know, it will get a million views. And then I can just post the same thing. Here's my 1 rep max, you know, on my strength transition to getting ready for peak week, and be all super technical, and no one gives a shit.
No, that's actually, I'm not very good at keeping up with my social media and stuff, but I do that. I'm like, why did this one get so many hits and this one didn't? And the more you fuck around and the goofier you are, the more hits it's going to get.
Oh, it is. I used to get one of my first, I don't even want to say it's a beef, because I've always had respect for him. I think we just went at it in the comments. I remember when I was doing a lot of like my early, 600 plus incline stuff. I remember it was Hoonster. Hoonster replied, he made a comment like, why don't you just get in there and train and just keep it simple and not do all the gym fuckery? And I was like, well, you do that, and that's why you have 1,000 followers and hardly any sponsors. I do this, and see, and I would always have, in my opinion, the last laugh, because the one thing that they could never take away is that I backed it all up on the platform. And that was the difference in my generation between the me's and the Castleberries or the Kevin the Hulk Washington, is all these people could look the part or be bigger, badder, do video collabs with whoever. But I would tell people, check the scoreboard, go look at Powerlifting Watch, go look at Open Powerlifting. You're not going to find their name. You know, like, if it's not in the books, it doesn't matter. And so that's the one thing I didn't care about how many gym fuckery videos I did, because I knew I always backed it up on the platform.
Right. Which totally makes sense, because you're like, listen, this is what I do. I like to do this. This is fun. I know, like, Chris Duffin always did these weird ass lifts and shit. And when he did his 1,000 for reps or whatever, he's like, I don't give a shit. I put my numbers in competition. I've shown I can do that. This is what I want to do. It's because I like to do it.
And that's a great example of Chris. Because I learned from him early on, kind of like, how we were talking about the old videos and the old school way of doing stuff. People would say, like, being awesome of his lifts. I'm like, don't look at how easy he makes a one-handed 600-pound deadlift. That's not what you need to be asked. The question you should ask him is, because people get in this pissing contest and want to compare. Like, you can't compare your 18-year-old 1 year lifting self to Chris Duffin's 20-year body of work and think if you do close to the sets and reps, you'll be doing the same thing, because you don't know how long he's mastered that video. But I think we all get caught up in it, especially the older generations, because that's how we were brought up. I remember looking at Muscle Development or Muscle Magazine, and I was like, okay, Dorian Yates is doing rows with this one. And I was like, if I can get to this set and rep, I'll get close, because I didn't understand there was so many other factors that went into why you're seeing, or the fact that they show these videos or they show these pictures, and you don't realize that's like when they're in almost, ready to jump on stage. Yeah. I didn't understand the art and the work and the behind the scenes of what goes into what you're actually seeing. You know what I mean?
Well, I think we all kind of started with that. I'm so old that I started with bodybuilding magazines was all I really had to look at.
Yeah, me too.
And I didn't know, like you said, like they go do 1 or 2 shows a year. They take enough photography that they can print stuff all year. I'm like, dude, these guys look like this all the time. Like, I didn't get it.
Exactly. And I would tell people, and I learned that, I learned because I get so much, why you only show. I'm like, don't get confused with what I post versus what the actual workout was. You're seeing 30 seconds of probably the last 30 seconds of a 2-hour workout. You don't understand how much, especially now with the curl videos. Like, I'll do heavy ass preacher curls, and everyone, dude, if I had a dime for every time bicep tear waiting to happen, and I'll just text back, well, if I train like you, or don't train like this, stay safe, don't lift heavy. I'm like, because these people don't realize I'm so methodical. I'll take a half hour to warm up before I even start loading it. And by the time you're seeing me lift 225, 250 pounds for reps on a preacher curl, Yeah, I know. I've seen the videos. Or have you seen the guy who tore his bicep? Well, yeah, that guy doesn't do time under tension. He doesn't stretch. His muscles aren't fortified to be able to handle that. He probably just went through 2 plates on it and tried to curl it. Yeah, I would expect that to happen to that guy.
Yeah, that's the funny part. I have such a love-hate relationship with social media because I'm like, it's such an avenue to learn, but then there's so many people who are drawn to just trying to make money off of it. And it's really hard to tell. Like there's some people I look at and I try to figure out what their training is like based on social media, but you're like, you don't know, just because he posted those videos, you don't know he did that today. You don't know
Yeah,
what he did before or after that. Like, really, you have no idea. Like, watching someone's social media gives you no idea of how they're actually training.
yeah, yeah. And it's true. There used to be a part of me that felt there was an onus you have. You kind of owed it to your community. I still feel that way when I post. That I'll try to put stuff in the captions, but the people who've been following me for years, they know. I mean, you can DM me. You know what? You can DM me and say, hey, can we jump on a phone call? I don't mind sharing because I look at it like none of this stuff is new. We all just kind of recycle, regurgitate, put a different spin on it, and pass it on, and hopefully make it better.
Mm-hmm.
So who am I to gatekeep any information that was given to me by someone who had it given to them? It's like you just take a little bit, keep what works, throw out the rest, and just kind of pass it on. But I've learned early on, no one reads captions. You could write a doctoral thesis and no one's gonna fucking read it. I mean, your diehard fans will. The people who want you to write an ebook, they'll read it. But for the most part, people on certain apps, I mean, it's a visual app. People are gonna like, click, move on. No one's gonna take time to read the captions. For those
Yeah.
people, I'll write satire. I'll just, here you go, baby birds. Let me feed you the reason why. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had people go, well, so and so said this, you didn't give them credit, and I'm like, dude, I honestly couldn't. I would like to say that I came up with at least a few things totally myself, but in all honesty, I've learned so much from so many people over so many years. I feel like everything I say is just something I took from someone else, and maybe I tweaked it a little bit, maybe I didn't.
Yeah.
Like, if I tried to remember everything I learned from every single person to give every single person credit, I don't know if my brain could handle all that.
Yeah.
So there was one post. I was flipping through your Instagram a little while ago before we got on here, and there was one where I think you reposted it. Somebody posted of you, and you reposted it, and he's like, "Yeah, I know he's curling a lot of weight, but his arms are full of synthons." I was laughing so hard.
The curl content. So to be honest with you, he was actually me and him. He sent me a couple messages. Very cordial guy. For me, and there's two. He's one of them, and the other one, I don't know him personally. I just don't vibe with. I think there's a way to be tactful and use your. How do I say this? I don't mind calling certain behaviors or people out, but then when you just start to use your platform and it becomes more of a bullying than it does for like I didn't mind the Joey Swole stuff. I was never, and I'm not a fan of the Goob stuff. That's just not my. I mean, I'm the type man to man. I'll call you out behind closed doors, or
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do something like that for clicks. That one was funny, and I felt kind of bad because people like, does he know who the fuck who he's talking to? He's just a hater because I see his content, and there's some of his stuff I'm just like you're really gonna talk shit to Simeon Panda about how to do a back workout? There's some of these people I'm like, the dude's a symmetrical god. Like, it just kind of sounds like hate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what I did is, if you go watch to his page, there's a guy who he's actually talking about that had his arms just blown up with Sentinel, and he's like curling like this unbelievable weight. So what I did is you could go to your stories and then import a video, and it will take like 6 seconds of that video. So what I did is I queued up the audio in the first 6 seconds of him saying that, and then I just overlapped it over my video, and just people were just going to town on this guy. And so in the comments, I even had to say, like, look, I pulled this clip from another page. You know, I'm not strong enough for him to fucking go. You know, I've been waiting the day when someone's gonna when I'm gonna make his page for just look at this guy, and then I would clap back. Well, I'm training for fucking arm wrestling and for strict curl. I'm not a bodybuilder, so don't talk to me about full range of motion. And the other one is there's a video where I'm doing a static curl or a static hold with 100 pounds. And someone had sent me this video of this girl, single arm, curling 100-pound dumbbell. And I've seen a dumbbell, so I know certain gym shows will use those just to have people for engagement. Oh, look at a lift 100-pound. Joe Rogan, I think, used the same one. And so I did a same by same, like my 100 pounds versus hers. And if I had, dude, there's so many guys in the comments, there's no fucking way that's real. And behind that sentence was, because I can't do that. I was like, if you have to compare your 100-pound lift to a girl's 100-pound lift, that's obviously not a real dumbbell. Like, she's living in your head rent free. I would never have to go to a page and comment, that's not fucking real. Look at, she has no muscular inches. But I'm like, guys are just losing. I'm like, tell me your beta have a fragile ego without saying you have a fragile ego.
That's so true, though. I don't know. I guess my parents grew me up. If you don't have something good to say, don't say anything. So like, very rarely do I comment anything negative because I'm like, nah, I'll just keep it to myself, whatever.
I will you know what? I don't negative. Okay. Like there's a guy, I respect his lifts. Gage guy, bench pressure, East Coast guy. He'll do some stuff like the other day, but I'll say stuff jokingly, but I'll get people that will take it like dead ass serious. Like, ooh, shots fired, or you're just jealous. He did like a 405 for like 21. And so I said, gosh, finally good to see someone that can do my senior, I remember high school lifting too. And people were just like, so you mean to tell me at 17 you were lifting like this? Yeah, that's just what I said. I'm like,
yeah, but that's kind of just being the smart ass, like with people that you kind of know that get it,
Yeah. So we met at the Olympia. I was gonna say, tell me your thoughts on it. On what did you think of the show this year?
The arm wrestling or the whole Olympia?
Just, I guess more of the setup.
I thought it was a little bit frustrating.
You know what? You hit it on the head. I thought there was a lot of great athletes, a lot of great stuff on display. And I don't want to. I mean, obviously, the Olympia has its right to do what it wants to do to capitalize on it being monetized. To me, there was too much fluff downstairs that could have been substance or filled with a lot of the athletic events. I think there's a lot of athletic events, and I think that's the difference between why the Arnold has grown to become what it is. Regardless of how you feel about Arnold lately politically. I just think it's an apples and oranges conversation at this point, because the Arnold does a really good job between putting the athletes on display and letting them be personable and on display with the general public, versus there was a lot of great lifts and a lot of good stuff. And I'm not saying this because me and Brandon Allen had a great arm wrestling match that nobody saw. I think there was many events and, things that took place like that didn't get witnessed that would have grown everything if they would have put it on the main floor instead of because when I talked to Julius Maddox and a couple other my friends that had went there on Friday, and they're like, yeah, half the stuff you're going to want to see, you're not even going to see it because we didn't even know there was upstairs. And I'd been going to the Olympia for a while, and I never knew that they ever did anything upstairs, so that was new to me.
Yeah, and it was like downstairs, it was kind of like one side of it was all just the advertisements and products. And then for some reason, they put 4 different powerlifting federations right next to each other. And then they had this stuff upstairs that I agree. I think most people didn't know. The only reason I knew is because I was helping some lifters out from the Navy upstairs.
Yeah.
And then they had them so close to each one. And I kept feeling like each one kept turning their speakers up.
Yeah.
to be heard. And then by that point, everything's just kind of gargled and I couldn't really understand what anybody was saying. And then for the athletes, it seemed like it's nice to have a little back area where when you're competing, you can be competing, and then, cause even there was one point where I said hello to Brandon and Brandon's like, yeah, I'm competing here in a second. And I'm like, oh, don't worry about me. Like, you compete, but he was out. I didn't know that he was getting ready to compete because it was kind of set up kind of weird, I thought.
Yeah, it was kind of, yeah, it was different in that regards. And then I remember when I competed, back in my day, USPA, or I think it was their international, I think it's the IPL. They would always, and they still do, but it was downstairs. It was kind of like the refuge where all us older, kind of bigger, non bodybuilding type dad bod, functionally fluffy guys can kind of congregate. You know what I mean? Because for the longest time, I'll body image wise, I hated as a sponsored athlete. I never probably caught more shit for not being like symmetrically appeasing as and I'll tell people this, the one show that I always am self-conscious of going to is the Olympia, because it's so bodybuilding, and it's the Olympia. It's such a bodybuilding dominated space that unless for the longest time, unless you're like a Dan Green or Larry Wheels, it's like good luck, because you're just going to get, everybody ridiculing you and this and this and that. And that's why I love the LA Fitness Expo, because there was a good mix of power and, bodybuilder and stuff like that. The Arnold is heavily power and strength dominated. So you walk around there and the interactions are awesome. And then you go to the Olympia and it's kind of like, oh, who's this big guy in this off season, type of thing.
Yeah.
And, and obviously now I don't take it as hard, but, there is kind of like that stigma to it. And it was the one time where, strength kind of had its own stronghold amongst everybody else on the bodybuilding floor. And now it's just like almost wiped away to where everything was moved upstairs. So.
Yeah. Which again, I think even if you have a bodybuilder who's like, I'm into bodybuilding, but he sees you come up and arm wrestle, or he sees you bench press 600 or 700 pounds, that's going to kind of change his mind, I think. Or he's going to be like, son of a bitch, that dude's strong as hell. If you're put away from everything, it's almost like, hey, we're going to have an arm wrestling competition and we're going to have a bodybuilding competition that could basically be in a completely different building, but we're going to put them together. And they didn't really advertise all the other events very well. It was still Olympia, kind of,
And I think, unfortunately, it's one of those things where you kind of get duped into the mystique, and that these shows present themselves that they're bigger than life. And sometimes, I get it, but sometimes I think they believe their own hype a little bit too much. You know what I mean? Because I'll say this. I understand, and it's almost justified, why you pay the space you do at the Arnold, unless you're just like in a horrible part of the show. For the most part, you're going to get pretty decent exposure and engagement no matter where you are. And then I remember, because I'm on the business side with a particular company that was doing some talks to be in sponsorship, with some of the events. And when they were telling me what they wanted, and then they were name dropping, well, we're going to be at the Olympia, and there's going to be so much. And I'm glad from a business standpoint that I didn't do one of the ventures with, and it's nothing bad against them. Did you see upstairs I want to say it's the Ultimate Something League? It was like, it's not strongman, but it's not CrossFit.
I don't think I saw that one.
They were right behind the powerlifting, but anyways, they were saying, if for to give them product and to be like part of their endorsement and official, even though we were going to give them a shit ton of product, they're like, yeah, it's going to be like 10 to 15 grand. And they give you a prospectus of all the reasons why. Well, we have all these events. We're at the Olympia, and then they always like to tie in the foot traffic and the eyes and exposure from the Olympia, but they leave out the part that they're fucking upstairs and no one's going to see the fucking event. And there's going to be, you know what I mean? So I was like, so when I went there and I saw where the event was and how much lack of engagement they had, I was like, man, I'm so glad we didn't spend that 15 grand. You know, it was better just walking around getting product in the hands of the athletes and the actual influencers that we needed without having to go through, you know, and I'm not one for, you know, nickel and dime in a company. I believe in having strong strategic business relationships, but that just made no sense to me whatsoever.
Well, I think I told some of the guys I was helping out there, I'm like, I'm not, I would be disappointed if I signed up to do the Olympia powerlifting. I would have been disappointed.
Yeah.
Like it was nothing like, you know, the old WPO days at the Arnold. That was incredible.
Oh, it was. And I think, you know, and I think we're just, and I'm glad, you know what, I'll say this, and I didn't want to go down here, but I can't help but notice the shirt, the flag, the stuff in the background. You know what? Yeah, I woke up fucking proud. I woke up proud to go to the gym today, to be able to say, you know what? I hope all the fucking soft ass snowflakes that don't want to see a fucking man be a man and want to utter the words toxic, I hope they fucking stay home. I hope they're crying to their fucking chai tea latte, boo-hoo-hooing it, fucking like wiping their face with a fucking man pond about the loss that happened yesterday, the red wave that swept over this country. I've never been more proud to step into a gym and see so many snowflakes not in the commercial space. And I was like, yeah, I know exactly where you guys are. It was a little bit easier to walk around and breathe in the oxygen and feel like, you know, just a fucking masculine man in a masculine space.
Yeah, I'm elections to me are always kind of interesting because in the end I go, listen, we've had presidents I liked, we had ones we didn't like, we keep going. I'm never going to be one of those people that goes, if he wins, I'm moving. I'm leaving this country. Like, I'm not leaving this country. I love this country. But definitely this morning, because I watched as late as I could last night, but I'm like, I got to try to get to sleep. And then I looked again this morning and I was like, yeah, this renews my faith in America. It renews my faith in people and manliness and being healthy. And I'm like, and renews my faith that people saw through some of the crap. And now we can get back to being tough and being manly and having health actually be something important for our society and our people.
It is. And, you know, it really is as much. It is funny. And I'll go down this road with you. I lived in I graduated, you know, college here. I went to college all 4 years here, stayed after, volunteered, coached high school football. And started my gym journey, my gym fountain, whatever you want to call it, in California. So I'll always have California will always have a place that, part of me, I always call this place home. Moved to Texas, for about 4 or 5 years ago, never been to Texas, always heard, everything's bigger. So I went there, great gym community. Shout out to Big Tex Gym, veteran owned, operated, love that gym. And then, the flu season hit, and I would talk to people back home, and I couldn't believe how many people, lost gyms, lost the ability to go to the gym, to work out, to all these things. And so I wanted to be my patriotic. I think everybody kind of did in the beginning. They said, okay, stay at home. We'll get to this thing called herd immunity. Everything's going to be great. And it got to the point where I'd see people's rights as being slowly taken away, even if you could show that you had the antibodies. So I was like, hold on, let me get this straight. I can show you I have antibodies, but because I can't show you this card, I can't go in certain restaurants. I can't travel to certain places. So you're telling me natural health, and then to say like, and it was. I remember the greatest thing that ever happened to me. My individual experiences is, and I can talk about this now. Big Tex. We had this clandestine operation where we had a person that would be there. You had a certain time where 2 to 4 people could go and work out. We had to go. It was like between midnight and 6 a.m. because they didn't want, the cops or anybody else seeing you go in and out of, a place that wasn't designated. essential and stuff like that. So we had to, I remember, always calling in a week in advance. Hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, can I get my 2 a.m. designated time to go to the gym? That you'd call, wait a minute, someone would buzz you in. We put up black tarps to block everything out so you couldn't see in or out. And I was just like, it's so crazy that they want to say this isn't essential for your everyday life. You know what I mean? But I can go to 7-Eleven, buy a Slurpee and all the junk food and everything on a daily basis, and that's fine. But I'm the weird one. I'm the crazy one for wanting to keep the gym open. And that part of me, that was kind of always like, that's when it made me open my eyes that, you know what, not everything is right with California. You know what I mean? And to the broader, and to wrap this up, I'm just so glad we're in a place where it is okay to be strong. It's okay to want to be healthy. It's okay to want to question, someone saying you need this, and this, that shot. It should be my choice. You know what I mean? So I'm glad we moved in a step back to that kind of thinking as a collective last night.
They say my body, my choice. And I'm like, well, you didn't say that when you wanted me to take the vaccine.
Yeah.
And then you went like, yeah, we want you to stay at home and you can Grubhub or like get food sent in and do nothing. Well, I need to be healthy right now. Like if there's stuff going around, I need to be healthy. I need to be out walking. I need to be exercising. And it just didn't make sense. And I train people out of my garage. I have my whole garage as a gym set up. And we actually had the gyms that I do go to in town. When I go to that gym or a gym, I saw there was a couple guys that I knew, and I saw videos of them lifting rocks out in the desert because they couldn't go to the gym. And I sent them messages and I go, hey, listen, like I got clients and stuff, but if you guys need to get into a gym and train, give me a call and we'll work out a time that you guys can come use my gym. Like, because I go, that's crazy. The fact that you can't go to the gym because they're freaking out about this virus is just nuts.
Yeah. And it is. And I've always been for not want to alienate other people's rights or freedoms, but it came to a point where I couldn't get down with the quote unquote cancel culture when you can weaponize and say health is now toxic. Like if you have testosterone, you're toxic. If you want to be healthy, that's toxic. All this, I despise that word, and this whole other thing of canceling. Like if you like steak, then you're anti-vegan. You know what I mean? If you like to be a man, then you're misogynist against women. If you know what I mean? I'm like, just if you don't like carrots, then you're it's like when did having a preference mean I was anti anything?
Yeah.
And I'm so what it is not that I'm not for equal rights. It's not that I don't want other people to come. It's none of that stuff. It's just don't let that side win where they can say if you don't play by our words or our rules that you're, the next coming. Because I'm sure if you talk to anybody that was alive in World War II, the stuff that and that's what blows my mind. We've seen the presidency, 4 years ago, and nobody was leaving the country. There was no fascism. There's no dictatorship, but so you want to pump fear in everybody, and then it just. I was just proud to be in the gym.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, it's when I go, I've always kind of had a lot of different interests, and people would be like, just because I'm big and I lift weights and I like to lift weights, I'm not making fun of people that don't lift. I actually have some great friends that don't work out at all. I wish they would because it'd be better for their health, and I'd like them to be around as long as possible, but I'm not criticizing them. It's not their choice. I don't care. So I don't understand why people would pick on me for wanting to be big and strong. That doesn't make sense.
No, and I fail to want to live in America where Planet Fitness wins.
Yeah,
definitely going in
not.
Direction where Planet Fitness was starting to win.
Oh, I would joke around and tell people, I'm joking. but this is actually serious. I go, someday, the way we're going, someday they're going to go, well, if you bench more than 250 pounds, you have to stop lifting because we don't think that's fair and it's not equal. Like, no one should need to be that strong. And I go, could you imagine if it actually got to a point like that?
I know I would have been canceled in 6th grade.
It would go back to like the powerlifting being a true underground strength sport where people have they bury containers in their yard and have gyms underneath it.
Yeah, that'd be the day. So we're both older. So let me ask you this: as you get older, and your goals change and what you're able to do physically, how do you determine what goals and what avenue you're going to go down next?
Well, I had some serious struggles in that area because when I kind of backed off of competitive powerlifting, I was forced to, because my mental health, because I suffer from depression and narcolepsy and sleep problems, and it would literally, I had some family members and team members pull me to the side and they're like, Chad, if you don't stop, you're going to kill yourself. Because I was just so depressed, but I was like, I don't care. I want to get this strong. So I kind of had to. We sat down and we came up with a plan, and that's when I started doing Highland Games for a little bit. And I actually kind of had to let my body heal up, and I lost a lot of strength. So then I kind of started building back up, and then I was using gear. I was using bench shirts, and I was like over 900, and I tore the crap out of one of my triceps. And so then by the time I hit my mid 40s or late 40s, and I'm 52 now, I kind of went, I'm never going to hit the numbers that I did before. Because at this point, I mean, powerlifting was literally like 10 to 15 years of my life. I didn't do a lot of the other hobbies that I love because it was all about powerlifting. And so I kind of went, listen, I want to do all these other things. And I ride my BMX bikes all the time now. I love riding my bikes. So it's kind of weird knowing that I'm probably never going to be as strong as I was. And that was actually really hard for a while. And then I just kind of went, listen, there's a lot of different things in life. And I'm still stronger than most people my age. Most people don't even know I'm 52.
Yeah.
So
when you had that intervention, did you, because something you had said about the narc, have you done a sleep study? Did you go down that path?
Yeah, I've had like 7 or 8 of them, I think.
Do you use your CPAP?
I don't anymore because I've gotten light enough that I don't need it.
Okay, that's awesome.
But when I was bigger, I needed it and I used it all the time. But we found out that the apnea was only part of the problem. The narcolepsy and the fact that I wasn't getting any deep sleep was the major part of the problem. Okay. But unfortunately, there's no cure. They're not even totally sure why it does what it does. They think it's an autoimmune disorder.
Yeah, I just want to touch on that because so many people, especially in our community, don't ever touch or address, the sleep apnea. We just all kind of think it's a given. Oh, you're big, you're gonna snore, and this and then. People don't understand. It's like so detrimental. So also, it helps give you the longevity. I mean, there's so many. I can list all the reasons, but I think it's one of those things we really need to encourage other people in our community to like, hey, get the study, get that checked out.
Yeah, I think I was doing a podcast with, I had Joe Sullivan on and we were talking about that. And I go, it's kind of, if you listen to me, sometimes it's stupid because I'm a huge proponent of sleeping, yet I broke world records when I was up to 11 to 14 days with no sleep.
Yeah.
I go, so, I mean, I don't know how the hell I did it, but I do know that with my sleep being so messed up, it was almost a gift, because it allowed me to see a whole different perspective. So now when I had my team and I was competing, I could tell when things were going wrong.
Yeah.
And I could get them to change and I could get them to go get a CPAP and I could get them to start taking their sleep. And I mean, you probably had this. I've experienced guys that are like, once they go on a CPAP, they're like, oh my God, that's life changing. I go, if you're sleeping bad and you're waking up and your oxygen's dropping all night, it's a huge difference.
it's like I hate to say it, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I say that, and it's one of the, and I think that's one of the things that I love about, guys like yourself and having these spaces where we can talk, because I think the two most things that guys our age can pass off to the next generation is like, hey, you don't have to do or listen to everything I say, but there's certain things I'm just trying to help you avoid going down some of the paths and learning some of the lessons the hard way. Because I think there's a fine line and a grace between learning from your failures and then just not having to make stupid mistakes. And I would say the sleep apnea is probably one of those things, unfortunately, that most people have to learn that kind of the hard way. And then the other thing is kind of touching back what we were saying earlier, kind of about the gear. I wish people, I wish when I was younger, people stressed the importance of getting your blood work done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things now, like, I have my own personal views. I don't think gear is necessarily the answer for everybody. It depends on what your sports are, what you're willing to sacrifice, because there obviously is a lot of sacrifice that comes with that. But I think it's almost irresponsible. Like, I don't expect guys like me or you to advocate for or against it. But what I do expect is the generation that's been through the trials and tribulations to stress the importance of stuff like get your blood work done, understanding what is what before you just go off and say, be reckless. I'm just going to take this, this, and this because so-and-so said so. And I say it's like we would never take our own vehicle to a mechanic and just have them guess, oh, I don't need you to run a diagnostic. I think it's the alternator. I'm not sure, but I don't want to pay the $100 for the diagnostics because I'd rather just pay, the $5,000 for the transmission. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense, but
it doesn't make any sense.
That's what people are doing. You wouldn't take your car to get something worked on without doing a diagnostic, but yet you expect to do the same thing without understanding what's going on underneath the hood, what's going on with the blood work. And it's literally sounds so simple of an analogy, but it's really that simple. Because for the longest time, my test levels, I didn't find out I was, deficient in tests because when I was getting my stuff, I was, a sponsored athlete. I was getting pharmaceutical grade stuff. And I was getting the best of the best. So I never would have thought in a million years that my test levels would have been off. And thank goodness I found out I did what I did. And then, as I transitioned to getting older, I found out less is more. I found out like you can do, run less because it causes so much havoc on other parts of your nervous system, stuff that you don't think about. And the reason why is because 9 out of 10 times your gym bro dealer is the one giving you the gym bro advice. And they're not going to give you, they're not going to say, you know what, you probably only need 1 violet test per month. No, here, I'm going to give you a deal on 6. And what are you going to do? Yeah, give me more of that. Oh, let me stack it with this. Because if you're not stacking, you're not cracking. You know what I mean?
He's a salesman, yep.
Exactly.
Well, a lot of people don't understand either. Like when there was a period where I kept getting sick every couple months. And then finally I got so sick one day, I had like welts coming up my legs and I'm burning up and I'm hot and I lost like 12 pounds in like 20 hours. And I'm like, oh crap, I don't like going to the doctor, but I'm going to go to the doctor, man. And he scraped some of the blisters on my legs and it's so hot. There was no more liquid in them, but they tested it anyway. Everything came back fine, except for my test level was like 112.
Damn.
And my doctor was actually a master's Highland game thrower. So he knew who I was. And I go, Doc, I'm benching 7. I'm squatting 1,000. I'm pulling 7. How is that even possible? And he's like, I don't know, but we ran it twice. He goes, that's it. And then when I went on, my sleep improved a little bit. Even after about a week, my training partners are like, hey, what's going on with you, man? And I'm like, what? I feel good, man. They're like, yeah, why are you so happy? What the fuck happened to Krabby Chad?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel better. And so the whole time I'm thinking, wow, how can I be this strong with no test? Supposedly test makes you strong. Like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
And then when we started kicking it up, it didn't really change a whole lot. It just felt better, And then so like there's that, and then it's like, what we did when we first started got different as we got stronger. And then we started getting older, and that changed. And it's like, I think one of the things I love about strength is it's like a mystery I can never solve.
Yeah.
Because I'm always up against different things. And, like when you break a world record, now you're like, dude, I'm in ground that no one's ever been. So, like, who do I ask? Like, no one's been here before.
That, you know what, that is such a great point. And that's one of the things that it's like that's why I think I love arm wrestling, and I love certain aspects of the strength community. And I think more so now, and I say that's probably the one thing that I'm thankful for social media, because your ability to get in contact with people that normally back in the day you wouldn't have been able to. And I think because people are so accessible, we're able to exchange knowledge. I remember coming up, trying to get to a 700 plus pound bench. It was the scare. It was like literally, and I didn't have a coach. I was self-taught. And I remember the first time when I was about to get ready to take a 700 pound attempt, it was at the American Cup at the US, the LA Fitness Expo. And I remember it was the loneliest, and it was the first time I think I ever got to really have a conversation and talk to Spoto. And it was weird because at the time there's only two people that I had access to that were living. Like, I've never met James Henderson. And so Spoto was pretty, forthcoming with knowledge. And then the other one was, Mendelsohn. So it's one of those things where it's like when you get to that level, like, who do you talk to? When you're in world record territory, people like, how many people could, Thor or Eddie Hall call up and say, hey, what do you think about, going for this or that? Everybody has a theory, but until, and it's one of those things when you have the kind of strength that guys like me and you do, we're very reluctant to listen to people, unless you have results, and it's funny like that. But I'm not the biggest fan of the form police. I don't give a fuck if you can do it and you're one of the best at it, then you're, in my book, you're the authority. Because and the people, I can only imagine the unsolicited advice you've got over your career, and it gets to the point where you don't want to be an asshole, but I'm like, bro, if I did everything you say to do, I'd be fucking just like you, and I don't want to switch places.
Yeah,
because you're not in the record book.
You're benching 7 or 8. Somebody comes up that benches 3, and he's like, "Hey, I think you need to do this." You're like, I think you need to shut the hell up and get away from me.
Exactly. And that's why I think we love our inner circles. You know what I mean? Because it's like when someone, it's not that we're trying to be exclusive, but they're just kind of like a code, like a brethren that we just, there's certain things, and it's not really don't ask, don't tell, but there's just certain stupid shit like, hey, have you ever tried this, or you ever tried that, or my friend or buddy? Well, your buddy, what has your buddy done? Or, you get the people in the comment section and stuff like this. And I'm like, and it got to the point where I would just start to congratulate him. I'm like, hey, you know what? I get it. Larry Wills is your favorite bench presser of all time.
Yeah.
So if you have to put me and him in the same conversation, that means I'm in your top 5. I'll take that. You know what I mean? I never understood why someone would have to use another person's lift, not their lift, nothing that they've accomplished, but use someone else's legacy to try to lower or tarnish yours. I'm like, if you like, me and Julius, Matt, we've been teammates, we're great friends. I tell people, if you have to compare my bench to Julius Maddox to make me look bad, I'm still winning.
I'm pretty goddamn good, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I get this. I kind of chuckle because I get the same thing now. Well, because one, I don't really post a lot of my competition arm wrestling. I'll post every now and again, but I'll post more stuff like at the Arnold. I think I posted only 1 or 2 clips of me and Brandon, but I posted like 3 clips of me arm wrestling the girls from Girl and stuff like that. And people, or other, me and Camille. Me and Camille's gone viral for me letting her win and all the mohawk, and people think she's training, whatever it is. People get it, and I'm like, no, I just like having fun. I'll tell people I'm 99-1 against women and third graders. On the hard wrestling table. I'm 3-60 against guys who actually know what they're doing. But it's one of those things. So and when I post that stuff, why don't you take on Levon? Why don't you take on Devin Leary? I'm like, you realize those are the best in the world, and they've been doing it like 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I did a podcast episode after I voted, because I early voted. And I was kind of talking about how I think these political people need to take a lesson from like top strength athletes, because it seems like we all kind of want the same thing. We just don't agree how to get there.
yeah.
But everybody bitches at everybody. And one of my favorite things is when I finally got to the level that I was competing in meets with the like top 20 best lifters in the world. And we would come to a meet a couple days early. And a whole bunch of us would be sitting down in the lobby or hanging out in somebody's room. And we're all talking about training and shit. But you know what? None of us train the same. But it's like you're in a room with 20 of the best in the world. Who's not going to fucking listen? Like, and so you could go, hey, have you done, they're like, hey, I got stuck here. Somebody's like, hey, have you done this? And you're like, yeah, I did that. Didn't work so good, but who knows? Maybe that'll work later. Or somebody comes up with something, you're like, hey, I'll try that. But everybody just listens and then takes what they think will work. And there's no bitching or crying about it. It's just like, hey, that worked for you. And like, I mean, we're all different. And even like you said with technique, I've actually seen people that do the exact same technique, but they look different because they're built different. And people are like, oh, he's not doing this or he's not doing that. And it's like, no, he actually is doing exactly what the other person's doing. It just looks different and you don't understand it enough.
Yeah.
And everybody, that's the one common ground I found with all the best top strength athletes is that they have the mentality that works. Some of them may be into techniques, some not so much. Some into training, some not so much. I mean, it just depends,
That's a great point and a great conversation. And I think we've all had that conversation too. I've had it, and it's usually I would say, I don't care what the lift is. If you were to take the top 10 people, whether it's dead, bench, squat in the world, and I would say the one thing that we probably all have in common, or there's two things. I would say if you ask all of us, say the greatest benchers in the world, to list the 10 things that make that person or you, like name 10 things. What are the 10 things that make the machine a top 10 in the world bench presser? And then you compare it to like Julius Maddox, or you compare it to TD Smash. We're probably going to have 6 to 7 of the same similar characteristics or techniques or methodologies, but we're all going to have those 1 or 2 nuanced things that make us different. For me, it was incline and it was close grip. For Julius, it's probably seal rows and his frequency, like his 8 to 9 days in between going heavy. Everybody probably has those 1 or 2 things, but like you said, we sometimes want to only harp on the differences and not the things that we have in common. But I would say the other thing that we probably all have in common is in those 10 people, we all probably did 9 or 10 of those things opposite of what the book would say. And I learned that early on. People would say, well, how are you doing this or that self-coach? I was like, just because you learn early on when you're really great at something, you do it outside of fundamentally how the book would do it. Like, I'm sure if there was a guide on how to golf, Tiger Woods started like when he was 2 or 3 years old. Martha Stewart probably cooks different. Mario Andretti. If you take the top 1%, they probably do things total opposite of how a quote unquote guru would say they're supposed to do it. And I think that's the one common trait that we all have in common is we probably, and I'm sure you were like this, you probably lifted way more frequently than a normal personal trainer would tell you to. You probably did so many things outside of the confines of how the book would say to do it, but it worked for you. And it worked to a level where it got you to world-class strength, and you can't argue that. So many people want to quantify, or you have to do A, B, and C, or if it's not scientifically proven. Well, sometimes you have to think outside the box to get outside the box results.
And I think a lot of that goes back to that mentality of you get to a point where you go, listen, I've done pretty good. I can do more. I have a feeling about this, and I'm going to go 100% with this feeling. Like for me, it was actually, I trained less than anybody else, at least in terms of my hard training sessions were more spread out than most people. And I got tons of criticism and tons of trolling about it. But I kept going, but it's working, and it's working for the people on my team. So why would I listen to what you people are saying when you're not at my level? You know?
Yeah, and it's hard. And I'm a firm believer, trust the process. If the process is getting you results, double down,
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to hear that, because a lot of people too, they want to, when you're successful, they want to grasp on. They want to feel like they were part of the process, or he got that for me, or I taught him that. You know what I mean?
I trained with him, and no, just because you were in the gym when I was training doesn't mean we trained together.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, everybody wants their claim to fame.
I just think even when I coach now, I have certain things that I like to do, but I'm so one is I always bench with my legs out in front of me, and I go, but when I'm coaching somebody, I go, I'd like you to try this, but I know too many other world record holders that bench with their legs tucked under them. So maybe under is what you need to do. I go, but let's try both and see which one you like better and which works better. Mm-hmm. Because just because it's what I did doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. I've just seen too many great athletes that do things way different,
Yeah. And that's, I'm sure you come across this too, especially because as we transition into the coaching space, because one, it's a small community, and two, everybody likes to have that 15 seconds of fucking something viral or something you got. So it's I'll go into spaces, and I'll bench press, or I'll see someone bench press, and one, it's crazy to me that like if you're good at what you do and people know who you are, it's funny to me that people won't ask for advice, and they'll keep. I'm like, fuck, I just want to tell this guy he's doing this, and that's wrong, but I don't say nothing. Or someone will ask me for a spot, and I'm like, oh, have you tried this? Well, I'm using such and such as my coach, and it's why is it everybody that doubles down and wants? It's funny, the coach is never I'm like, and I learned, I just don't say anything. I say, okay, that's cool, keep doing that. Because I don't want to say first of all, your coach has never benched shit. And second of all, whatever they're teaching you isn't. But I mean, hey, but I don't want to be that guy to badmouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. There's a lot of times, even when I was training clients in an actual gym, my clients would they'd be like, Chad, blinders, because they know I would look around and it would drive me nuts seeing people do just completely moronic stuff.
Yeah.
So Chad, just look at the ground, don't look around right now. And
and that's the other thing I don't understand about powerlifters. And maybe it's just because the way the sport is conditioned. First of all, 3 lifters will never have love for specialists. And I look at it not a cocky way, I look at the opposite. I'm like, if I only focus on this and then I focus on that, what do you think would happen? Like that would blows me away, the hate, especially the bench only guys that we get, and it's how many times do the bench specialists have to break tradition and what they do and then go do something, and everybody's like, oh my God. For the longest time, people wanted to ridicule TD Smash until he went in and fucking destroyed it. People wanted to talk, Krill's only good at bench press because he only works out. And then he goes, I'll never forget, when Krill was in his prime, he went to a meet and opened with 700 across the board. Fucking opening lift, just did 3 lifts and was at a 21 total. And people were like, oh, he's just a bench. Julius, same way. And I'll tell people, I'm like, and this is back in the day, and I'll say this, I'm like, so let me get this straight. I got to a 700-pound bench press with no coach. So you think the same fucking D-ball and trend that helped me bench 700 pounds isn't going to let me get to a massive fucking squat or deadlift? All of a sudden, my legs aren't going to respond. And people just be like, I'm like, and I'll tell people, I'm like, look, if I'm benching 7, if you have to compare your deadlift to my bench press to make me look weak, you should be lucky that I don't focus on just deadlift, because I'd smash whatever fucking numbers you're doing. I'm lifting 700 pounds with my fucking arms. What do you think my legs are going to do? I would tell people you should be lucky that I don't deadlift.
I think that's funny. And I love teasing my buddies that were bench specialists just because I'm a smart ass.
Yeah.
But honestly, when Julius, I remember seeing videos of Julius when he did some squats and deadlifts, and I'm like, yes, look at him go, you butt fucks. Because anybody who knows anything about a bench, if you're benching 600, 700, 800 pounds, dude, the rest of your body's strong as shit too. Like your legs are still kind of supporting that. There's no way you can't just do a decent squat.
And I'll tell people more, and I always say that more people have walked on the moon than have bench pressed 700 pounds. And
yes.
To me, I think pound for pound, I think bench press is the toughest. And I'll say this as a bench only guy. Bench is the toughest because deadlift, if you get your belt. If you can't get it, you can just drop it. Squat, you get a belt. You get fucking knee sleeves. You get all this extra safety shit. And if you can't get it, you can just dump it. Raw bench press, you're in a fucking shirt. Oh, you get wrist wrap. Those don't do fucking. I've benched. There's been meets where I've gone and forgot my wrist wraps, and I've still hit a 650. A 650 versus 640 is not. Wrist wraps are not going to be the fucking difference maker. If you're benching that kind of weight, you already have strong wrist.
Yeah.
You know? But the amount of hate that bench only, I'm like, if you can't get it, what are you gonna bail? It's gonna fucking fall on your chest. There's no bailing on a bench press.
Well, it was Blaine Sumner was on Brian Shaw's podcast, and he said exactly what I say when they were talking about. He goes, I always love the squat because there's a fear factor. Like you could get squashed. And he goes, if the deadlift gets heavy, you just let go of it.
Yeah.
And like when people, because I was probably a better squatter than any other lift, but people always they assume that's my favorite lift. And I'm like, no way, dude, the bench is my favorite lift because I get to lay down. I go, that's awesome. But yeah, the bench and the squat, you could really get hurt. Like you could literally die.
Oh, definitely.
And to me, that's exciting. Like I actually liked that.
What's your scariest moment under the bar? Like, has there ever been a weight that you were like, holy shit, I'm about to try this?
I would probably say that's a good question. I got a really weird sense of humor. So the scarier it gets, almost the more I like it. There's been I've had some 1,200 pound squats where I went, this feels heavy, man. I got to stay tight, man. Like if I get loose at all, I'm screwed.
I think 1,200 pounds on the fucking bar would do that to you.
And I've went down with 1,050 at AWPC Worlds, and I went down with 1,173 at seniors. And I'm not the guy. I'm not letting go of that bar. Like my first thought, if something goes bad, is I don't want anybody else getting hurt. So I'm not letting go of it. So I rode both of them to the ground.
Oh, that's crazy.
We had one time we were benching. Me and my partner were benching at the gym, and most of the time I would go 700-800 pounds with just my handoff guy. And I was handing off for my partner who was going for 7, and he had like a single ply Phenom, I think. And he gets down to the bottom and that thing just explodes. And the bar comes over his throat. And I catch it like an inch over his throat. And I'm just standing there and I look down at him and he looks at me and I go, that was close. And then we both start laughing. And then I'm like, oh shit, all right, let's rack this. And I look up and the guys in the gym are just their eyes are like this big and their jaws are hanging open. And they're like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah. I think there's probably 4 moments in my lifting career. The two oh shit moments were probably the first time I was doing a hardcore training cycle, getting ready for a comp. I think I was getting ready to go 650 plus. And my training, it was the first time I had 600 pounds for a triple. And just, if you've ever, 600 pound raw, there's 500 and 500 plus for reps never really bothered me. But there's something about the heaviness of when you take 600 pounds raw and when it's reps, because you just know at any moment a twitch, you just know you're just fucked. So when I was scared enough to do it for a double. So when I had it for a triple slated going into it, I was stressed that the whole day before, the whole day of, because I would do my lifts, I would do heavy AM and then take and get my 4 or 5 meals in, and then go heavy back at night. Monday fucking international bench night, and that's what I knew. I'd have all my spotters and lifters there, and I was horrified the first time I had 600 for a triple. The second time was later in my career. I was doing overload training, and I think I had to hit a 750 and an 800-pound for a single in a fucking bench daddy on incline with a Duffalo bar. So I'm lifting with a Duffalo bar to deficit. With the Duffalo bar, is such a hard-ass bar to fucking give a handoff to, let alone on the incline. And at that angle, I'm like, I just, if this is going to get fucking super heavy, super fast. So when I first took it off and felt it in my hands, 800, you're under 800 pounds above your head. It's a scary fucking thing.
Oh, yeah.
I think the two funniest moments, I've always kind of wanted to you learn to love and respect the judges. I remember it was USPA bench nationals. And the one thing in my training, I love taking a pause. I will pause and leave it on my chest. That was kind of my gym fuckery. That's one of the things out between incline and leaving like 500 or 600 pounds on my chest forever. So the one thing I knew I never did in a fucking meet was jump a command. So I remember, and it was like something not even that heavy. It was like 580. It was like an opener. And I went, and it was Big Red, one of the USPA judges. He's like, he red lighted me. I'm like, why'd you red light? He's like, you lifted early. So I said, are you fucking kidding me? You're telling me I lifted, I didn't pause it long enough. I lifted before the command. I go, there's no way. So, and I think I still have it on video. So my second attempt, I was like, I'll just take it again, right? So I purposely, and you can watch. So it comes down, I bring it down, and it's on my chest, and you can see him lift. I get the lift signal. And I leave it like 585 on my chest for like a good 5 fucking seconds. And everyone's looking at me like, and then I power it up, and I turn around and I say, yeah, don't ever say I can fucking pause it. And so, and then I remember there was a whole big thing about the fucking strict curl record and this and that when I first was attempting, because a lot of people didn't want to see anybody come close to CT. So in my mind, I felt a certain kind of way. So I went to a meet. It was a qualifier for, I think, the Arnold or for something else, and I already hit my opener. It was like 212 or something. Like in strict curl world, anything over in strict curl, 200-pound strict curl is kind of like the 600-pound bench. It's kind of like in that same kind of ballpark. There's not a lot of people have done it. If you get to that level, you're super elite. So I had already opened with like a 212. I already won the meet. No one was going to come close. So I was like, what would be really cool? And so one of my training partners and one of these other guys, he's like a hardcore, old school, by the book fanatic. I said, watch this. So they had to make sure, because you have to give your attempts, and if it's a world or whatever, it was going to be an American record and whatever federation. So I said, hey, my next attempt is going to be the American record at 226. I want you guys to announce that. So they announce it, and everyone's like, okay, is he going to hit this? And I had already set the American record. I hadn't gone for the world record of the 250. So it was like, it was like going to be like 226.5. I was just going to chip it. And so I go up there. I said, hey, I want you to record this because I want to get this on film, because this is the biggest fuck you. And I've never done this in my whole bench press career, but I wanted to do it on the platform. So I go up there and they load up the bar. And so I take it, strict as fuck. I take it for a fucking double. And so the announcer is like, did he get red lighted? Yes. Did he do 2? Yes. Did he only need to do 1? Yes, but he did it for a double. So I took the American fucking record and I doubled it. I knew I was going to get red lighted, but I was like, this is how much I don't fucking respect this record. This is how light I think this record is. Could you imagine taking like a fucking 900-pound squat in a fucking huge big ass meet, and then you just double it, knowing you're going to get fucking red lighted?
Okay. Truth be told, that has definitely been in my head before, where I'm like, I come up and I go, I could fucking do this again. I go, but then they're going to red light me.
Oh, you should have done.
I love the fact that you just said, fuck it. I'm fuck you. I don't even give a shit. I'm doing it.
It's because we always hear the kids say, do it for the gram. I wanted to have a lift in a fucking sanction meet where I did it for knowing I was gonna get and it wasn't just an opener. It was like the American record. Like he just doubled it for the American record for a double, knowing it was gonna get red lighted.
That's just classic, man.
Yeah, it was because out of all, and it's one of those things like until you've done a strict curl, like I joke with Brandon all the time. I was like, bro, how do you sell so many fucking programs in strict curl, but you don't have any records and you haven't competed? I go, explain that to me. And we just chuckle about but Brandon is still chasing the elusive 200 pound strict curl. And I know he'll get it. He's a hell of a guy, great athlete, great coach, great competitor. But it's just as a testament to how hard that particular lift actually is. So every time, like, and I'll still troll him every time he'll do like 190 or he did 200. I think he's like around 210, 215. Because I know he watches my shit. I'll repost the fucking video where I did it for a double.
I did have one meet at APF's. I think was that at APF Seniors, and I blew my squat suit out. I completely blew the leg out. And I was like, oh shit, I got to get this, but I got loose and missed it.
Yeah.
And so I only kept one suit with me. And we went around and I found some people that had some duct tape. And so I guess word got to the judges that I just duct taped the leg back together. And the judges came up and are like, hey, we can't, like, that's an altered suit. It won't count. And I said, I don't give two fucking shits. I go, I'm going to go squat this goddamn weight. You just let me know if it would have passed afterwards. I don't care if it does or doesn't. I'm fucking doing it. And I went out and I nailed it. No, and that was a little scary too, because the whole time I'm like, I mean, I can do this, but if the tape busts, I'm going to have support and then not have support, and that's going to be really fucking weird.
So let me ask you this: where does do you walk a fine line, or do you feel you have allegiance to one or the other, or do you give both raw and geared their kudos, but you realize they're two separate things? Because I feel a certain kind of way about it, and it might surprise some people my take on it.
Hey, so I've been fortunate to call Ed Cohn a friend, and one of the things I always loved about Ed Cohn was just the person he is. He's just a good dude.
Yeah.
And so, like, the first time I met him, he didn't give a shit about gear. He's like, what do you lift? Like, what do you compete? Are you a good competitor? Like, that's all he gave a shit about. And I've always looked at it like drag racing, where, yeah, I like watching Top Fuel, but I watch pro stock. Like, I get that they're not going to be as fast, but they're still fast. So to me, I lifted in gear because when I was lifting, the best of the best were lifting in gear, and I wanted to be on stage with the strongest fuckers in the world. Raw wasn't that big back then. Like, nobody was really doing it.
And it wasn't. I remember back in the day, when I was coming up, and it ties in with this. If you weren't a gear guy, you weren't getting any accolades. You weren't on TV. Right. You weren't getting in powerlifting. If you weren't an inter guy or a Titan guy, like, you didn't exist. So I always kind of had that kind of chip on my shoulder because I was like always an outsider, being raw, never part of the club. Until this day, I'm one of those, like, I'm old school and I don't say anything negative. I respect the hell out of anybody who gets under the bar and anybody who does it on the competition stage. And I understand there's nuances that not everybody can throw on a shirt and be super, super, super strong. Mm-hmm. And I have respect for those people. And I guess my reservation isn't with the lifter. It's more with the fans or the quote unquote fanboy entourage. And I'll say this, and there's the two people that I think I've probably had the most internet reactions with or from, but never personally. I've met both of these guys and I know them. I know Tiny better than I do Damon or not Damon, but Jimmy. I never have a problem with either one of them. I have a problem with the people that try to say your 675 isn't shit compared to so and so's, 1,000 plus. And I was like, when neither one of them can do 600 raw, you can't talk shit to a guy who does 700 raw compared to 1,000 in a shirt. And that's why I always had so much respect for Kennelly and Mendelson, because they were one of the few that were able to be dominant. Not a lot of people realize Kennelly was a 650 raw competition person as well as 1,000 plus in the shirt, which is very, very uncommon. Same with Mendelson. And then, fast forward to the last couple of years, that's why I had such disdain for all the internet sensation people that wanted to crown Daniel.
We were I have a funny Kennelly story because I had him on this podcast too.
Yeah, right.
Back in the day at Wabdell, he was warming up in the back, and he would warm up heavy raw.
You were a Wabdell guy?
Yeah.
That's where I got my start.
Those were some of my very first meet was USAPL, but I was doing Wabdell in my early days.
Yeah, my first bench comp was Wabdell, and I remember reaching out to Gus, and Gus was like, "Well, we put on the best meets. We're gonna have the best prize money, the best trophies. You just got to be there." And I'm like, "This fucking Gus guy is fired up about this shit. Let's go."
He gets fired up.
Yeah, it was my first comp. I lost my first comp. I got my ass kicked by Kennelly. Kennelly hit like granted, it was a bench, it was a shirt, but he did like a 611, and I did like a 485, and I was like, "Fuck, I got to catch this guy."
Yeah. But he was warming up and he did like 600, and like the guys on my team were just screwing with him, and they're like, "Yeah, but you didn't pause any of them." And so Ryan does it again, and I swear to God, he came down, looked over at him, and then pressed it up. We were just like, "Holy shit, that dude is just strong, like just fucking strong." And I'm good friends with Jimmy Cole. Jimmy has the utmost respect for raw lifters too. Like he knows that it's
why I never let it get personal, because I understand, like, I'll say this about him. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up on my lunch. The people that love Jimmy, and he's a good person. He's great for the sport, but I think sometimes the fans get overboard.
Yeah,
with trying to, like, you don't have to put someone else down to pump him up. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I always say I want to be the tide, man. I want to raise all the ships. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think I've always seen it as like, listen, they're kind of in a certain way, they're different. Like, because you can't say, well, these guys train in gear, they're not strong raw. Well, they don't really train raw. And to take a guy like you, like, here's what I always say about you and Julius and that. I go, dude, I would love to see him put gear on and focus on it, because I think they'd blow the fuck out of everybody. I go, but they just choose not to, so that they don't put the time into gear. It's not like you can just throw a shirt on. You guys could probably throw a shirt on and still do a damn good number. But you're one of the best in the world. If you decided to be one of the best in gear, I have full faith that you would be.
I think it would be, and it's in the one thing that I get asked that question a lot. And it's not that I don't consider it. It's because the one thing I'll acknowledge, and it's the same thing I learned, the same reason I haven't been as active with strict curl, because the one thing I noticed, like when I got to strict curl, I took all the methodology and all the stuff I used to get to a massive bench press. I applied it, did everything the same with strict curl. The difference is people don't realize about powerlifting, you're only going to be as good as your team is going to take you. And when I say team, your spotters, your lift off people, your people that are watching everything, your camera person, because I film and I watch breakdowns and study film. You can't get to a world-class bench press on your own. You can't get to a world-class strict curl, because it gets to a point when you have to take on, for me at least, you have to take on overload. You can't safely overload 250 plus pounds on a preacher. That's why I would do this weird stuff. Like, people would say, why did he take 300 pounds and fucking set up straps or bands in a fucking monolift? I'm like, well, that was the safest place where I could overload 300 plus pounds on a fucking curl bar.
Right.
So because two people are gonna hand it off differently. They're not gonna spot it the same. And one small little thing, you're gonna tear a bicep. So I had to get really creative. But I remember that when I did that, I would overload with 300 plus pounds, and I'd set up the curl rack, preacher curl in a monolift. And I did it like 3 or 4 sessions. So I would get my biceps acclimated to have it. So in theory, if I could handle 330 on the negative, then by the time I got to 250, it'd be relatively easy. That was the first time I actually had to, I'll never forget, I had to pay people to show up just to make sure they were there. Like I probably paid over $1,500 that meet prep because I was paying one person $100 for 10 sessions. Hey, you're a personal trainer, half hour of your time. I just need you to call out the numbers because I need to make sure someone is here for this 10-week training. Remember, that alone was $1,000, $100 each session. And I didn't mind it, but that's what it took. And so I'm saying that to say this, the bench, the shirted guys, I never had a dedicated enough team to probably have been good as the best in that sport are, because you watch the Tinies, you watch the Kennellys back in the day, you watch the Kolbs, they all have a 3 or 4 or 5 person team that's dedicated to their safety, pushing them, knowing what to watch. So I tell people it's very hard to get to that level of, bench press in a shirt because you have to have that team. If you don't have that team, you're not going to get as high as those guys. And I'll say this, like people think I could just call up someone or, hey, let's go to the gym and train heavy. You'll get people that'll show up for day 1 or day 2. And then it's, oh, I'm so sore. I did chest yesterday. I would offer people, hey, you want to work out? No charge. They don't show up. So it's one of the, like when you're at the top, it's super, super lonely. And people think like, oh, you're kidding. Who wouldn't want to work out with you? I guarantee you not everybody is lining up to want to go bench with Julius Maddox or a TD or what. It's when you get to that level, it's very, very lonely. You think, oh, it'd be the easiest thing. Then the other part of it is the trust. I don't trust the average person to give me a 600 or 700 pound handoff or a lift off or a spot.
No, I've seen people go into gyms and you got like 225 in there and somebody's like, I don't know if I can hand that. It's like, dude, if I miss it, I just need like 20 pounds of help. That's
exactly
like, but yeah. And then, if you're benching 225 or 600, that handoff is actually really important. Like they could completely screw something up, if they're taking too much or lifting it too high and pulling you out of position. I mean, there's a lot to it. And the better, I tell people, I go, dude, it's like a window. When I'm new and a beginner, that window's this wide open. I can make all kinds of mistakes and still get better. Yeah. But the better and better I get, this window keeps closing more and more.
Yeah, because when you're up, it doesn't matter whether you're raw or shirted. Once you're up over 500 pounds, one slip, one malfunction, those are career-ending lifts, and people don't understand that.
Yep. I've said from day one that like I didn't make it to the top by myself. It wasn't just me. It's all the people that gave me advice. It's the other lifters that helped me, and most of all, it was my team of guys that I had. I mean, my one handler, his family traveled with us everywhere. If I wouldn't have had that, there's no way I could have did what I did.
Yeah. And that's what makes the sport great. And in those instances, everybody wins. You know what I mean? Because you're thinking everybody's a part of that victory. But it's different than the guy who wants to give you the unsolicited advice, who has no investment other than he just wants to say he was at the table.
Yeah, there's always that. It's kind of weird, actually.
Yeah,
I don't think people. And that's kind of why one of the things I like about this podcast is talking about what we're talking about, where people that say they want to get to the top or criticize some of the top people. It's like, you don't even know. You don't know what it's like to make it to that level and what you go through and what you sacrifice. Like you don't make it to be one of the best in the world. Like when lifting is the like number 7th on your list of priorities, like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And finding other people to help you out and the dedication you put into it. And I mean, I know a lot of people that train hard in the gym, but then they don't do shit outside the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get your sleep? Did you get your nutrition in? No.
Yeah.
Like even do you add your calories up or do you just eat?
You know what I do now that I'm on the side of it going down and just being heart healthy and, cardio healthy. Now I have a a coach who does my diet and stuff like that. So it's easy because now it's just cut and paste. I know what my macros and stuff are for the day. Now it's just
how many calories are you eating right now?
Right now, I'm probably on about 1,700.
Ooh, that's low.
Yeah, I'm at a deficit. I'm trying, and I say it's the one. That's why I love arm wrestling. It's the one sport that I found where I can lean out, do a ton of cardio, be at a deficit, but still maintain and get stronger as I go. Because to me, and that's a whole different conversation. It's just about where I place the carbs in the day and in which meals. So get my carbs before my heavy lifts, and then functionally after a certain time in the afternoon, I just cut out the carbs. That's what helps me maintain me at a deficit. So but still be functional.
Yeah. How old are you? 47?
Yeah, 47.
So are you considering, like, is health becoming more of a consideration?
You know what? I'm at that point where, whether it's strength, because this whole it's kind of like a mind fuck, because I have to, you go through your 40s, and if you're I would say the smart side, if you're on the smart side of this equation, then like the last couple of years have been going through this. Well, my 20s and 30s, I was told and coached this, but now I'm doing this. Like, I never would have thought I could be at a calorie deficit and get stronger. I never would have thought I could do cardio for an hour before a workout and still have a great workout. So I'm starting to dispel all these methodical fucking gym isms that I thought, you have to do this, you have to do this. And so now that I'm seeing the results, and I'm leaning out, and I'm becoming heart healthy, and all these other things that I was anti, just wasn't part of my day to day. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Now it's got me thinking, well, maybe I can still do this. Because I'm at that point where I don't want to give up to the competition or the competitive side. I just got to find things that make sense. Like, realistically, going back on a strength training cycle, get to a 700-pound bench, it was hard enough to do in my 30s, healthy, on gear. Like, now just being on TRT and in my mid-40s, I highly doubt that it's obtainable. But I like the trajectory of where the arm wrestling's going. I like knowing that if I, knowing everything I know how now and putting together a strength cycle, I think I can make another attempt at like a strict curl world record if I wanted to. But I'm happy on the trajectory of just becoming the best arm wrestler as I can.
I think, what would you say your natural body weight is, like, before you ever wanted to start lifting heavy?
Natural, I was probably 200, 205, to somewhere around there.
That's where, because my natural body weight always fluctuate between like 225, 270 ish, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And on my heaviest, I was 397. And I'm like, I think it was Louis Simmons once said, you don't see too many 300-pound 70-year-olds. And I was like, it's probably true, And so, like, right now I'm down to about what the hell was I this morning? 312 or something.
Yeah. That's why I want to get down to about 300-ish and slowly start coming down.
That's where my shoot. Because it seemed like when I did start, I could always fluctuate 20 or 30 pounds pretty easily, but it seemed like my body got used to being 380 pounds.
Yeah.
So then I would cut, but then it would start creeping back up pretty quick. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to I'm in no rush. So let's drop 15 and hold for a while, and drop 15 and hold for a while, and drop 15. And I go, by the time I'm 60, I'll be 270, and that'll be cool.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So that's where I'm at. And I'm like, my next step is to bump down to 300 and just hold for a while. But I want to maintain as much strength as I can and stuff. Unfortunately, I had a back injury that's just starting to heal up. But it's just, for me, like, strength training, I love lifting. I'm going to lift for the rest of my life, but it's not the priority strength wise. Like, I just want to be strong for a 50-year-old now, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because there's so many other things I still love to do, and it's still easier to do that lighter. Every now and then it creeps in my head, hey, what if you put some weight back on? How strong could you get?
Yeah,
I got bigger because it was easy. The bigger I got, the stronger I got.
Yeah.
Until I hit 397, and then I felt like crap, and I dropped back down to like 385 and started getting strong again.
Yeah.
But I know, I mean, you just can't hold on to it forever, but doesn't mean I don't want to hold on to it as long as I can.
No, hey, you hit it on the head with that one.
I think so. What, it's interesting what you said about like learning that you can do cardio and still train. I think one of the big things that I change on from, at my prime, it was like, dude, I'm training so heavy, I can't afford to waste energy doing anything else.
Yeah.
So I train heavy and eat and try to sleep, and I look back now and I go, man, that was not the best. I should have been doing more GPP. I could have been doing, some hill sprints or something. And now I kind of push that power lifters, specifically power lifters, need to consider themselves athletes, and they still need to be able to move and need to be able to train, And I think you can fit that in with your strength training and still be good.
Yeah, and I think so, and I think you hit it on the head, and that's something I love about arm wrestling, is because you have to have that cardio factor in there, and so now I'm starting to see that you can be highly functional, and now and for the same, and that's the thing I'm kicking myself now, because I think if I would have applied this aspect of it, I probably would have I don't know, I think I would have lengthened or extended my career, because I'll admit the last couple of years, it just gets, for me, this isn't everybody, but for me, there was a point where you feel you're running you're running your system, you're running your program. Week 1, 2, 3, you feel super good. 5, you're strong as fuck. And then 6 gets lethargic. 7 gets lethargic. 8, you're fucking huffing and puffing, taking your gym bag, to the fucking gym, and then heaven forbid you got to fucking travel. Then you got your stuff. You're going through the airport, and you're like, "Fuck! I wish I could just jump on like a fucking golf cart right through this terminal." Everything becomes fucking heavy. You're winded, and then you feel back to normal, like the first or second week after the event, when you're not all fucking amped up, carved up, fucking whatever you're running. It just hits it to the point where, like, this shit just isn't really fun. You love it, but that week 9, 10, right before you go into the meet, you're just like, fuck this shit. Like, I don't want to, you dread that feeling. You know what I mean? And then what happens is you go your meet, you hit your PR, you win, whatever. And then you forget about how fucked up that feeling was. And then you take some downtime, your deload, you have some fun, you have your off season. And then, meet prep comes around, and you're like, oh, do I want that feeling? But then you get sucked back into it, because the first 1, 2, 3, you love your newfound strength. You have new goals and all this, so.
Do you feel like back then it was almost like you felt like, well, this is just the way it is. This is the way everyone does it. This is the way it has to be.
You know what? It's one of those, it kind of goes back to what we were saying. The guys, when I'm in my inner circle, and I'm talking to elites, we all kind of felt the same shit. It was just kind of those, we all feel it. Nobody talks about it. It's just kind of one of those suck it up, buttercup. That's just part of the sport. Because the guys who weren't feeling like that, you just talk to them and they're just not known. They're not winning. They're not in the record book. So you're like, okay. And then you fall into this macho, no pain, no gain. You're like, well, you're not feeling none of this shit because you're not winning. So so we can't relate. So in a weird way, it validates the fucked upness that you're going through, because the other people that feel everything is fucking peaches and like rainbows, they're not going through it, but they're not getting the results.
Yeah.
So, but you don't realize it till you step away from it. You know what I mean?
I had, one of my figure girls, right now she's my only figure girl. She just competed. And she won. She's 46 or something like that. And she won like the 30, 35, 40, 45, and then won the overall. And this whole prep going in, I actually held her back a little bit. I didn't let her lift as often as she used to. I kept her off. I had her do a little more fun cardio kind of stuff. And the whole time going in, all of her friends are like, do you feel like shit? Do you feel horrible? And she's like, no, I'm good. They're like, are you craving this? And she's like, no, I'm pretty good. And like, she came in leaner and better. And we fixed every weak point that we had as a goal. We grew. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think you need to feel that fucked up. I think if you feel that fucked up, something's going wrong. And I think there's a balance in there. And I think we did a really good job finding it this time. But it's funny how everybody around her, like, you're supposed to be miserable. And she's like, no, I feel really good, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's a balance in there that is like the next step we need to find. And I noticed, like, this is how I don't give a shit if people lift raw or gear or single or multiply, whatever the hell you want. You know, like what Jimmy does in that band shirt it's just crazy to me. And I know the band shirt helps a lot, but it's still fucking ridiculous. It's amazing. But like I look at all the raw lifters right now and I'm like, God damn, dude, there's some raw lifters that are just strong as shit. And I'm really amazed with like the middleweight kind of guys. And I'm going, how the fuck are these guys this strong? But I think they're in better shape than we were.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, so there's something to that. And I had a couple of IFL football players I was training, and I would train them with power lifters. And every now and then I'd be like, hey, we're doing strongman today. And like, I would have this IFL football player come in and beat my strongman at a yoke. And I'm like, how the fuck does that? I mean, these guys never train yoke. They don't train that heavy. How did he come in here and run with a 900-pound yoke and beat my strongman? And it's like, because he's in way better shape. That's why.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think there's this, I think to me, powerlifting has always been this, it's finding that perfect balance. And I think if I look back at my career, I go, I mean, I don't look back going, I wish I would have changed. I'm proud as hell of what I did. I would have did it all the same unless I had more knowledge. And I think it taught me a lot, but I look back now and go, I probably should have done a few things a little different. But that's like what we talked about earlier with teaching the youth. You're always going to run into problems. But if the guys that are older that been through it, if we can make them or help them to realize the problems quicker, then they can get to the new problems.
Exactly.
And they can get stronger faster. And the fact of the matter is how strong you can get, to me, really boils down to amount of time. I mean, you're going to have 20 or maybe 25 years that you can train serious. That's it. So how strong can you get in that period of time? And that's kind of where I feel like as a coach, I feel like my job is I'm more of a guide or a mentor to kind of help people figure out what they need quicker.
Yeah. And I think that's very well said. I think a lot of people get it wrong and I think on both parts, I think whether it's the coach or the athlete, people think we're supposed to have all this knowledge and give everybody the answers. I think great coaches just show you where to look and how to unlock what you already have within.
Yeah, I agree. Because I mean, that's going to build you. That's going to build resilience in you, and the mind is every bit as important to work as the body. You know, I actually laugh because there might be a few top guys I know that I go, I don't know how smart that one is. But you know what? They know a lot about training. Like, I don't know anybody that got to the top from genetics.
Yeah.
Everybody I know has, like, anybody in the top, I will listen to anything they say. Maybe I don't agree with it. Maybe I don't think it's the best advice, but that's what they use to get there. So it's worth me listening to. Because we're all so different.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's the thing I love about these conversations is that we realize through our differences, we still have more in common.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to just be like, there's stuff the power lifter can learn from the bodybuilder can learn from the football player can learn from the strongman. And when you leave yourself open to those different types of methodologies or understanding, you know, the different ways that people do different stuff, you start to realize like there is so much more to learn. And then it makes you kind of, each time you teach something, you kind of relearn it and then you rethink it and then you apply, you know, the good and the bad and you get kind of different results.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you progress. That's how you grow.
Yeah. And I've always said, like, what I did to bench 400 was different than what I did to bench 5 and then to bench 6. And then as I got older, things had to change for that. Like right now, my recovery was never good because of my sleep. But as I get older, I notice, dude, my central nervous system's definitely having trouble keeping up. which means I got to give myself more time to recover, or I got to figure out how to get more sleep or how to up my nutrition,
Yeah.
or get in better shape so I just can recover faster. It's always something, but that's what I love about it.
Yeah. As we get older, you either get older, you get better, or hopefully both.
Mm-hmm. To a point. Unfortunately, I think we're all going to have a point where it's like, I'm going to hang on to every bit for as long as I can.
Yeah.
I go, if I can be 80 years old and step back on the platform, I don't even care. If I'm on the platform, I don't care what I'm lifting at that point.
Yeah. And that's what I always wonder about our generation, especially with the social media, the Instagram, like at what point do we just kind of let it go? You know what I mean? Or does it just kind of stay part of us and we just kind of evolve and grow with it?
I don't know. It's hard because, I know some top guys that you don't hear from anymore. I know some that are still training. They just don't want to be in the public eye, I guess. I know some that don't lift at all anymore.
Yeah.
And like for me, that's not even a possibility, man. I still got to lift.
Yeah,
But
I think I'm the same boat there.
It's hard though, and there was a time where I had trouble like just dealing with the fact that I'm not going to do what I did before, or even recovering from my back injury. It took me a long time to figure out what it was, and then changing careers and stuff and getting everything healed. Where it's like, dude, I'm like trying to get back to a 500-pound deadlift for reps. And it's hard for me because I'm like, dude, this is weak. Like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I got to go, Chad, listen, here's where you're at right now. So everything you do better than this from here on is technically a PR. Like, you're starting over. So just enjoy the ride again, because now you get to start from the bottom, but you got a lot more smarts than you had before.
Yeah.
And just see what I can do with it. And it's definitely a tweak in the mindset, but the way I see it, I had to tweak my mindset to get as good as I was. Because I'm sure, I don't know if this happened to you, but like there's kind of a point where when you start where you're like, you don't think you can be that good. And then you get a little bit better and then you're like, hey, maybe I can do this. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I can do that. And I remember the first time I went, I'm going to squat 1,000 pounds. I'm going to do it drug-free. And everybody's like, who are you? What makes you think you can do that? Like, I don't know if anybody can do that. And I'm like, well, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of start building that confidence as you go.
I think a lot of it too is like when you put in the work, and that's where, regardless of you put in the work and you get the accomplishments and the accolades, but you were doing it because you love the work.
Yes.
That kind of instilled the worth. And that's where you got the validation from. It wasn't from the external. It wasn't from the pats on the back. It wasn't from the medals. It's like, guys like us, we're going to be strong to be strong. It didn't matter if we got a medal or a trophy or whatever, just as long as we knew that we put in the work to get there. And then we knew we were going to continuously do it. So it gets to the point now where you don't necessarily have to jump on the platform. You just appreciate and love the grind. And I don't think that part will ever change. You know what I mean?
That's why I think as you get older, it just becomes, and I don't know, I'm not 70 yet, but I truly, truly in my heart feel like I'm still going to be lifting at 70. And maybe it's like, hey, I just want to deadlift 400 pounds at 70 years old, but I'm still going to be proud of putting into work and being able to do that,
Exactly.
All right, sir. We've been chatting for a couple hours now. Dude, I really appreciate you coming on. This was an awesome conversation. A lot of cool points. It was cool getting to know some more about you and your journey.
Yeah. Likewise.
But it was amazing. So are your focus right now? Are you more like on arm wrestling right now? Are you going to do some more strict curl, or haven't decided that yet?
Haven't. You know what? It's like I have a little, not a lot of downtime. I don't think I think I'm going to clear my slate and just really focus on the arm wrestling training. I don't think I have a super match or anything coming up until, mid-January. So I'm gonna start applying heavy training back into my day-to-day. If I jump on the platform, I would like to say in the next 6 months, I might take another strict curl. But right now I just want to focus on, just becoming the best arm wrestler. that I can. So yeah, so I think if I do step on the platform, it would be for strict curl. But right now, I just want to get just pound for pound, become the strongest arm wrestler I can.
So I can't say that I know a lot about arm wrestling, but I do know that there is technique to it.
Yeah.
Would you say it's more forearm strength, more upper arm strength, or like more shoulder strength?
You know what? I think it's being able to work everything work. I think it's being able to eliminate your strength is going to come from limiting your weaknesses, if that makes sense. Like,
no, that's always made sense with
press,
that.
Like, to break it down, bench press, you could have weak shoulders, super strong triceps, and build that up, and you're going to get to a certain level. Or you could your wrist could be weak, but as long as you have triceps, arm wrestling is the one thing like I found coming into it, having world class like strengths, especially when it came to biceps and chest, the two muscles you think would be super, super dominant. You learn early on if you don't have the wrist, if you don't have the coordination and the tendon strength to be able to keep everything tight and together, you'll win some matches, but that's going to be the breaking point between the next levels. Because at the next level, technique is going to beat over, brute strength. If it was about just brute strength, you'd see, the Brian Shaws of the world jump into the sport and just dominate everybody. That's why there's still learning curves to it, because technique is such a big factor. And so it, a lot of people, it's like it's one of those things that there is a couple year learning curve. And I think the biggest difference is how fast do you break away from the bad habits? How fast do you break away from bad training techniques or bad training partners? And then how fast can you put aside your ego and really lead? It's the one sport and the one discipline I've really had to learn into. Your new strength is going to come from not necessarily relying on your old strengths, but it's from leveling up your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So for me, I came into it being super, super chest, tricep, bicep dominant, strong. And I've had to learn to untrain that to the point where I do more small day-to-day movements than I ever do the heavy strict curl stuff that I was known for when I came into it. So now it's getting to this point where I'm learning the technique, I'm doing the day-to-day stuff, and now it kind of creeps in my mind, well, if I'm doing all this stuff, what happens if I add some more horsepower and start to add in that heavy stuff again? Because I've learned to subdue and get away from it, because it's one of those things. I would win matches, but I would lose matches because I would rely on that point. I would let someone take my arm into a bad position, and I'd feel comfortable because my bicep was so strong.
Right.
And that's the thing too, that I learned. And I think Brandon and other people that I've talked to from a strength background is like, so many people are so used to being at the top. A lot of them can't understand and go through that learning curve. They can't go through, and I'm not going to name names, but there's strength athletes that you've seen going to arm wrestling that have dropped off, because there's about a 2 to 3 year like time period where you're going to take a lot of L's. And so for me, and I said this recently, I just went to the World Series of Arm Wrestling in San Diego, and it was such a huge tournament, and the announcers and everybody, the athletes, the spectators, people, and the announcers would constantly say it over the mic as the different matches were going on. They're like, there are world-class arm wrestlers. There are people that go to state and national meets and win that will probably not even place at this tournament. And so when you look at it like that, it's very, very humbling. And so when you look at other people that have come into this space, and I said it myself, it was humbling, because when I go to a powerlifting meet, I knew 9 times out of 10 I would get first place. As long as I bench press 675 or higher, no one was going to touch me unless I ran into like a Julius Maddox, which is like most of the time, you know how it is in strength. Most of the time, you go to most meets, 9 out of 10, if you're like world ranked, you're going to be the top person there. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was humbling to spend 20 years as a powerlifter and win for, like, I have, I think you can see it behind me. I have a whole thing of trophies. Nuts
Oh,
and bolts.
I looked up your what is it, open powerlifting now?
Yeah.
And you go down that list and there's an awful lot of first places in there.
Yeah, like I think most of my career I spent benching over 600 pounds.
Yeah.
So you go win,
Mm-hmm.
first, best lifter to this last one I went, and I was proud of it. I finished sixth, left and seventh right, so they only placed the top 8 out of like a field of like 25 people. So to me, it was a big deal, but it was so humbling to not be center stage first on the podium.
Right.
I'm like, this is a different fucking feeling. And a lot of people that come from the similar background as mine, they can't take that.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's
can't handle it, or they can't handle not being the top dog or going. Like, it was hard to come from world class powerlifter to rookie arm wrestler.
I think that says a lot about your mental strength, your discipline, and your tenacity. Just to go, okay, fine. I'll put in the time. I'm gonna do what it takes. Like you said, a lot of people are like, no, I already did my work to be the best, and they don't want to do it again.
And that's the motivating thing. It's like is a lot of it's funny because the elites in the sport will say just stick on, you're gonna catch it. It's more the mid-level guys or the guys who haven't accomplished anything. And I'm like, you've never been a winner in anything in life, so why the fuck would I listen to you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if you've been doing. Well, I've been doing this 6-7 years, and it takes there's level. Well, I understand. Like you hear people talk, and I'm not the biggest fan, but there's certain quotes that I like of his. Have you ever seen or watched Wes Watson?
I've heard the name. I don't know a lot about him.
So he's talking, and this is true because I've had family members that were convicts, and you'll hear there's not everybody does their 10 or 20 year bid the same way. There's some people that the time does them, and there's other people that go in and it's like they take the time, they put in the work, and they come out a better person. And there's another person that just literally they just had a train ran on them by just sitting back doing nothing, eating fucking shitty, not training, not doing anything, no personal development.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, you've been in the sport 6-7 years. What have you put into it? Because I can see what you haven't put into it because I see your results on the table. So it's one of those things. It's like, if you're willing to put in the time and get with the right people, the sky's the limit.
And especially when you do, and in today's society, we have access. I mean, I can't, like, how many, I mean, even when I was coming up and then reaching the top level, like you look around and I see so many top guys that are so willing to help anybody, so why would you listen to a low level or mid-level guy when you could talk to the best?
Yeah. It is. It's one of those things where you can learn a lot from people, but it all comes down to mindset. The same stuff that's the one commonality. The same people at the top in arm wrestling have the mindset, and they probably will be at the top in bodybuilding or whatever they choose. So that's why I 100% believe that there will be a learning curve, but I believe a guy like Brian Shaw will eventually be at the top of the game. That's why I believe a guy like myself will eventually be at the top of the game, because the mindset, the work ethic, and like you said, the key word, the tenacity, that doesn't change or dissipate just because we're switching disciplines. It's just a new puzzle. How long is it going to take us to figure it out?
Yeah. And it's a lot of the same concepts of how you figured out powerlifting and bench pressing. You're going to go through the same steps to figure out arm wrestling.
Exactly.
It seems to me like I'm thinking of the forearm and the hand, and it's like you guys could probably train more often because those muscles are just made to work a lot more. Is that necessarily true?
Yes, it is. It's one of those things where so for me, I overtrained when I first got in it, and now it's one of those things you have to take a healthy approach and it's the one sport it's way different than powerlifting in this regard. There's a difference between muscle recovery and tendon recovery. Like, I beat up my tendons and ligaments in arm wrestling. There's a good 3 to 4 weeks it takes to get back to normal, versus I could go bench press and do 5x5 with 600 pounds, and I'd feel tight and sore the next day. But then I could go, bam, do the same workout again, because 20 years of my CNS taking that kind of abuse, it becomes resilient. It learns how to respond to it. I don't have that same type of connection memory built in my tendons because I haven't gone under that kind of training. So, and that's why they say there's a 2 to 3 year. It's not really so much the muscle. It's not so much the technique. It's getting your tendons acclimated to that kind of wear and tear, because nothing you do in a strength sport puts your tendons under that kind of stress.
Right. And you guys, I mean, I know you guys, when you guys go to a competition, you're going to arm wrestle multiple times, and a match can last quite a while. Yeah. Like, so you got to, your tendons and ligaments got to be in good shape to go through days of that. It seems does. Like
so we come in, a guy like myself or Brandon, we come in at a higher strength level, and we have the fortitude to stick with it. And then it's just a matter of if you stay with it, because it is the one sport I'll say, like, just when you think you're training hard, there's someone out there training harder every single day. So you have to be willing to be dedicated and put in the time.
But you got to pay attention to that recovery too.
Oh yeah,
there's training hard and training smart, I think, are two different, not two different things, just added to the same thing, I guess.
Oh, it is. It's like learning to trust the time away. That's the biggest thing for me, because powerlifting, I was never a deload guy, but arm wrestling is one of those things you have to take a break from the gym and from the table.
Well, like, yeah, like you said, if your tendons aren't recovered and you go into a competition, how can you perform to your best?
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because I've looked at like, I think geared lifting takes a huge toll on your central nervous system.
Yeah.
Like bodybuilding doesn't seem to get your central nervous system. It's more just muscular, and you can recover and train probably more often. And that's interesting what you said about arm wrestling and your tendons, because, they don't have a huge blood supply. They don't recover super fast.
Yeah. And that's what makes it hard too, by like powerlifting and strongman is one of the same, that we're such creatures of habit, and we get our routine and we get our program in.
Yeah.
Versus, say for example, I might go to one tournament and take 2 weeks off and feel fully recovered, and I might go to another one and only be able to take a week off and still have good results. And then where the mind fuck comes in is, was it the regimen, or was it the people I faced? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
because you're facing different opponents, different styles, different strengths, you know what I mean? Then there's the whole other thing too, that the thing that makes arm wrestling so difficult is sometimes people are really good about hiding stuff. Like, I'll arm wrestle someone, and then you'll find out, like, man, I just hit, oh fuck, I was sick all last week, or I didn't take any time off, or I just had a super match like a week ago. You don't ever truly know what someone else's strength level was.
Right.
And that's why I have a lot of respect when I watch, post-fight interviews for someone, like, man, I put in the work. When you hear someone say, I respect so-and-so because I know they busted their ass to come in and I fought the best version of them. That's the one thing that's hard about arm wrestling, is you never know if you fully beat someone at their best. You know what I mean? There's so many different variables, but it makes you train under this mentality that you can leave nothing unturned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's good because it makes you mentally sharper on so many different aspects.
It's more, are you really enjoying the competitive? Like, I mean, because powerlifting is competitive, but really a lot of us are just competing with ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, but here you're literally competing with somebody else. Do you find that kind of cool, not having that for a while?
It is, but it's I always say one of my biggest slogans is what gets measured gets improved. So for me, it's like my motivation is, one, I hate to fucking lose, and two, I always assume like there was the scene from Pumping Iron where they were eating breakfast and Arnold was psyching them out, and Louis like and Arnold's like, well, fuck it, we can have a month from now, but then I get stronger too. So it's one of those things. I've made it a mission to like I don't really care if I lose to someone that I haven't faced, or because you go and there's rankings, you know what I mean? Like say for now, I will be devastated if I lose to Brandon because I beat him. Now I understand if we grip up again, I know he's going to work his ass off, and I know he has probably more motivation going into it.
Yeah.
Well, he should have more motivation because he's been doing it longer and he's got a bigger name in arm wrestling than me. So for me, that was like I've gripped up with him in the past couple of years, and he's always been a level ahead. So I went into it almost mentally defeated, knowing that if all things are equal and he got into it here and I got into it here, even if I level up to here, I have to assume that his level's got up. So it's a matter of at what point do I catch up? You know what I mean? So now in my mind, I have to train under two things, knowing that if we grip up again, he's training harder. And two, I have to be mindful, like, I love and respect that guy. I know he's also, a family guy. He's getting ready for his family. So I have to think logically that I might have not caught him at his best. You know what I mean? And that's the variable that I don't know. Did he train his ass off going into that? Did he not? I'm under the assumption that he had a lot of other stuff going on, which isn't a bad thing. It's part of the sport. It's part of when you're not an amateur, but neither one of us are making our living off of being an arm wrestler. Right. You know what I mean? So I have to assume there was other stuff that on his day-to-day life that was going in that probably played a role in how much he was able to train. Do I think those same variables or distractions will be there the next time if we take on a super match? No. And that's why I love it, because I'm under it's like Russian roulette. I know he's loaded up, so I have to load up too.
Yeah. So in the end, you just got to keep getting better.
Yeah, because you can't ever, nor would it be, because he's a world-class athlete. He's a world champion powerlifter, so I know he's got the mentality that he wants to go out there and put on the best show he can. He wants to be the best version. So it actually makes it easier for me to train, because I know he's leaving no stone unturned. Yeah. So by knowing his mentality, it makes me have to sharpen up my game that much more.
Yeah.
And because he's a winner and I'm a winner, that's the difference between us and other people, because other people will fall back. Oh, I beat him. I don't need to take this seriously. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, now the mentality, that's why you're going to get left behind. That's why on the rematch, you'll get your ass kicked, and there's people that are like that in every single sport. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the difference too between, like, say, when you do break a world record, like, okay, you just did the best ever. There's the people that go, cool, I'm done. And there's the people that go, no, I got more.
Yeah, I've always been that person that it's been fuel. It's like things are either going to become a spare tire that's going to weigh you down, or you're going to turn it into fuel.
Yeah,
in the tank. So for me, it's more fuel when you set a world record, because then you're at the top. So then you have a million people gunning for that position, versus when you're climbing up that hill, you know what the number is. You know what you have to get to.
It's kind of like a guy who would take the record and double it.
Yeah, there's that. Man, we got to do this again. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Definitely. It was. I'm so happy you agreed to be on, and it was such a cool podcast. But I'm going to wrap it up. And so until next time, I'm going to hit my little outro.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit CourageBarbell.com. Until next time.